Hello and welcome. This is the Sustainability Leadership Series, and today I have the pleasure of introducing you to my colleague, Mark McDermid. Mark is the 2021 Thomas L. Eckert Leadership Forward Award winner, and sometimes you hear us internally refer to him as Mac. Mark currently serves as the Senior Consultant for Sustainability for WMEP. So Mark is retired from the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, where he was the Bureau Director for Corporate Environmental Assistance in the Office of Business Support and Sustainability. He helped to co-develop the Green Tier program, which I'm sure some of our listeners are very familiar with, and worked to help businesses proactively build environmental management systems. He has served on several policy advisory bodies to the U.S. EPA, represented Wisconsin on the Environmental Council of the States, and served for more than 15 years on the Small Business Environmental Council. And Mark has been a mentor to me and to many, many others across Wisconsin over the years. And while he is actively working towards full-time retirement, his skill set and knowledge are so valuable to me and to our team that it's hard not to ask him for assistance. So thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me today, Mark. It's a great pleasure to introduce you and welcome to the interview series.
Thank you. Pleasure to participate as well. Thanks.
Awesome. All right, well, I have to start by letting our audience know that you are one of the most practical thinkers that I know when it comes to helping sustainability make business sense for companies. Can we start by talking about how you came to this approach?
Sure. I think probably the biggest part of that foundation came during the time that I was working in healthcare and working in manufacturing. The biggest part for me was developing an understanding of the press of day-to-day activities. In other words, no one was standing around waiting for sustainability to come forward. So it had to have some relationship to businesses and activities. The second thing that I would say is I've always had a focus on developing approaches that kept environmental, social, and governance issues from being placed or lobbed over a green wall. And what that means is, in very practical terms, it means integrating sustainability with business strategy. It doesn't derive its strength from being standalone. It derives its strength from being integrated with regular business decision making. The second part of that is engagement of accounting. Accounting folks know and understand what things cost and what the variety of variables are that go into contemplating what value is going to be created for an organization. The third part of that is it really required a better understanding of risk and opportunity analysis. And that includes prospecting for opportunities and including things like risk-adjusted returns on investment. So that marriage between that historic dedication to ROI and the introduction of risk and the integration of opportunity development were some of the primary motivators. A couple of other things that I would say on the practical side is, one, starting where the organization is, not starting where you want the organization to be. Being willing to look for improbable allies and unexplored issues, because you never really know who's gonna, and it was especially true in the early days, who's gonna even be interested in sustainability. And then to go along with that is a measure of patience in building the business case and accumulating performance based on evaluation expectations. So in other words, make sure that you know what it is that you're going to measure and make sure that you're patient in terms of how you put this business case together. And the last piece that I think is fundamentally important, and interestingly enough, I think it's still somewhat important in businesses today, and that is thinking beyond compliance and acting on the basis of applying systems thinking, knowing that there are integrated, complicated, codependent systems, and you can't act in isolation, or you're going to find that you've got collateral things that are contributing. So those are the things that I would say have kind of anchored me in understanding what needs to be done in order to engage with business at a very practical level.
Yeah. So many good nuggets in there. I mean, I think so many times I hear, how do I get buy-in from my leaders? And I think, your connection to engagement, to the accounting team, to finance, and understanding an ROI in relationship to risk, in relationship to, expanding beyond a traditional ROI, all of that really helps build that business case. And yeah, starting with where you're at, you can only start there, right? We say all the time that sustainability is a journey, and as somebody who leans inpatient, absolutely understand how much patience is required inside of that journey to, create small wins and build upon those wins as you're building that business case. So
curiously enough, you see a lot of times where somebody says, I want just what they did, and they start where somebody else is, as opposed to where they are and what they need to do to get to that level.
Absolutely. Well, maybe you can talk a little bit about the importance of materiality here, because I know that's conversations we have frequently, that often businesses can skip over that step. And so maybe just tell listeners what materiality means in your lens and why that's important.
It can't, materiality can't be approached as a single dimension. It has to be approached as the way to understand what strategies need to be developed. And it means looking outside of your four walls. So it means what is important. I need to rephrase that. It means discovering the significance of what your customers, your competitors, your suppliers, your employees think in terms of relative significance in relation to other projects or processes or aspects of environmental performance. Materiality is often misinterpreted as what's important, and there's a real difference between what's important and what's material. What's important, there's lots and lots of important things. What's material are the things that are, in many cases, existential. It's a subset, and a very small subset, if it's done well, of what is important. So you might have a very large matrix of all kinds of important issues, and materiality is discovering the true significance that warrants the strategic attention of an organization sustained over a period of time. It's your guiding light to a desired future state.
Yeah, that's so well said. And I just want to add that, right? Like, it's okay to start with inside your four walls from the standpoint of your employees are a stakeholder, your board is a stakeholder, your leadership group stakeholders, but then, really when you broaden that and you go outside to look at your other stakeholder groups, it's when that materiality really can, grow real legs inside of the organization for adding value across your value chain. So yeah, so I love how you said it's not exactly what equals what's important, because sometimes people interchange those words, but there's not, I actually was just having this conversation earlier today with our team, is like, there's not another word that materiality, besides materiality, that means materiality, right? So yeah, thank you for that. I wanted to ask, you've been working in this space for over 3 decades. What are the most noticeable
Has
changes?
it been that long?
Yeah. Has it been that long? Am I right?
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You're dating me, Jesse.
Well, I've been here over 2 decades now, so
Now you're dating yourself too.
exactly. Um, so what are the most notable changes that you have seen, specifically across Wisconsin in that time? And then also, what do you predict will be the next? And if I'm not asking too many questions at once, really, like, where would you like to see us go?
Well, let me just add one caveat.
Yeah.
Having worked at the national and international levels, I don't know that there's anything that is distinguishing as far as Wisconsin as is concerned. There might be some attributes that make us a little bit different there's always Midwest nice and some of the stereotypes that we get.
Yeah.
But in terms of the fundamental operation of a business in Wisconsin, I don't know that there's anything that's inherently different here. So my comments are really going to be based on both state and national level. So the first difference that I've seen over the course of time is I've seen performance supersede compliance in companies and service providers. For so long, the fundamental element of sustainability was environmental compliance or compliance with social norms or meeting what some organization or government body said you had to do from a governance standpoint. And I think we have transitioned in most businesses at this point to say, yeah, okay, I understand compliance is the price of entry, but performance is really what I need to be focused on as a business. The second thing that I've seen in that performance realm is performance really has become multidimensional. In other words, there can become complementary gains for something that a business does to make themselves more profitable, but it's also going to produce results that need to be captured, accumulated, assimilated, stories told about them that talk about how the resources are better utilized, that talk about how resources are protected, to talk about social norms that are being addressed and employee satisfaction that's being derived. So the notion that performance has a multidimensional base, I think, is one of the changes that I've seen. Candidly, it's a fundamental change that has to come about if we're to break the consumptive cycle and move to circularity. We're not there yet, but I think the notion of having multidimensional performance has helped. I think that we have actually empowered businesses and provided profitability recognition has been one of the changes that we've seen. There in the early days, there was always this assumption that if you want to address environmental risk, you need to regulate it. Well, that's not going to happen. The billions of dollars that would be required to address the 75% of unregulated risk just simply aren't going to be appropriated. And what's happened is many businesses have found themselves in an empowered position to address this notion of sustainability, and that's been a change. They're not going to sit back and wait for somebody at this point. And years ago, they would have said, well, I'll worry about it when the government passes a law or when my customer tells me I have to do it. And that dynamic's changed.
Mm-hmm.
The customer and consumer interest has not only increased, but it's organized itself. I mean, the notion of a shareholder resolution asking for a certain slate of candidates to address environmental issues, that would not have happened 30 years ago. Well, maybe there's a company out there that could prove me wrong, but to the degree that it's happening now, that's a change. Consumers making decisions based on sustainable attributes of products and services is a change. Another piece that I think has helped us is the professionalism associated with sustainability and the tool development that's taken place. You don't have to create it all yourself anymore, because there are tools out there and you can find things that are going to help facilitate the move towards sustainability. And if you're paying any attention at all, sustainability as a professional core competency has been elevated so that people are actually looking for that in individuals that are coming in. It's not just somebody who went through environmental health and safety or was an environmental engineer. Sustainability is recognized as a professional attribute. And I think there's the other thing that I've seen, and I don't know that I can't give you a cause and effect relationship, but I think in the sustainability space, there's been a de-escalation of competition, and there's been an acceleration of sustainable practice collaboration. And that's evidenced in the formation of coalitions by sector, across sector, geographic coalitions where firms that are competitors with one another will readily share information about sustainability. So those are the changes that I would say I've seen mature over the course of the last 30 years. Makes it a pretty exciting time for somebody that's coming into the sustainability space right now. Some of the issues that we face, like, oh yeah, I know what sustainability is, it's energy conservation and recycling. No, it's more than that. And then you had to fight the battle to say, okay, here's why it's more than that. But now there is a recognition that it's a multi-dimensional goal that we're trying to pursue, and different metrics, different professional competencies, and frankly, different business models are going to be needed in order to be a leader or to have it transform your business.
Yeah.
So absolutely. What was the second part of your question, or did I answer it?
Let me just reflect for 1 second, and then I will ask it. I just wanted to also just say that, like, from my experience in my tenure as well, in relation to what you're saying about the profession being elevated, and is, this trend that I have seen really in the last year, both with the rise of ESG, but the companies elevating the position of sustainability, right? You used to see sustainability coordinators, then sustainability managers, sustainability directors, and now we're seeing like CSOs being added, chief sustainability officers and VPs and whatnot. So I just wanted to add that as that component of, the professional attribute you're speaking to really, really being elevated. So the second part to the question was, where would you like to see us get to in your lifetime, I guess?
So I won't limit it into my lifetime, because I'm old, and I don't know that I'll necessarily be around that long.
That's a good perspective.
I think that where I would like to see it go is for that measure of integration to be both formalized and systematized. And I might talk a little bit more about this at the end, just as some reflections about what I think are the challenges that are coming up that sustainability professionals coming in, or corporations that are looking to either start or energize the program would want to do. But I think the desire that I have is to see some systemic approach to sustainability that reaches critical mass within the business community.
Mhm.
And frankly, that's recognized by government and communities.
Mhm.
You know, the notion that somehow you're going to jump into this and dictate a structure, I think is a pipe dream. This is really going to have to be about discovering company discovering what its true north is as it relates to sustainability and integrating that into the value creation proposition for that company. You try and do it in some formulaic fashion, um, folks are going to drop out, or they're going to drop the ball, one of the
Yeah,
two.
yeah, I agree. I've seen so much, and I don't like to use the word nuance, but that's just what's coming up in terms of, taking into account the culture, the systems already in place, the size, the sector, like all of these things that make a company unique. So it does really make sense to find that time to, as you're calling it, figure out their true north in terms of sustainability for their organization and integrate that. I feel like that's part of my life goal and mission. So I support that and work to achieve that, definitely across Wisconsin, but also beyond. So let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned environmental social governance. ESG is sort of a buzzword these days. What do you think is contributing to the rise in awareness and interest in company performance around environmental social governance actions and reporting?
Well, I'm going to start perhaps on what to many of the listeners would be obvious, but make no mistake, profitability and cost management are still probably the most significant driver, both
Mm-hmm.
internal to a company and across the value chain. If you try and have this conversation without um, profitability and cost being a part of the equation, there's a certain part of your audience that's going to go immediately to sleep. So that is a major driver. Um, the the um, the driver, I think, is the examples of and the potential for transformational impact in a business of sustainability, and the notion that ESG, the notion of looking at, again, multidimensional performance, could actually transform a company that may be incrementally moving forward and looking for that next big step for them to take in terms of growth, business development, acquisition. You name all of the things that go into that cost equation, and there is transformational potential associated with this, and organizations are recognizing it. Second thing, if you're reading anything related to the business community right now, investors are a big factor, not only in publicly traded companies, so be aware of that, but also in those that are supplying or purchasing from publicly traded entities or companies, or those that are on the consumer side of the equation. In other words, they're selling directly to a consumer, retailer, service provider, those kinds of things. So investors and consumers are going to be a major factor. That goes back to the dollars and cents side of the equation as well.
Mm-hmm.
The third driver, I would say, is climate change, buoyed by both, or buoyed entirely by the science, the optics, and the impact. Droughts, the cause and effect relationship is starting to become more and more clear, and the impacts are becoming more and more dire. The toxic chemicals that were trapped in the bottom of the Great Salt Lake are now blowing in the wind because of reductions in water levels. Weather events, you'd have to be asleep at the switch not to say, gee, it feels like we've got a lot more billion-dollar storm events. And the answer is absolutely. If you look at the numbers, that bears itself out. and then also the vanishing resources and the biodiversity reduction. And the issue is not so much that we're running out of something. It's there are dire consequences associated with that, but the issue is the impact that that has on a societal or community governmental level, or frankly, even in the business community for that matter. So it's not just scarcity, it's impact that's going to start accelerating the interest in ESG. And then the fourth one, and I would say companies are just now beginning to experience that. Some of it has been more robust, and that is the collateral value of resilience strategies, which is the underpinning of ESG. If I know how to react to a cataclysmic event like the COVID virus, I can keep my business going and I can keep my employees around. And what we saw generally was those companies that had ESG programs and had resilience as a part of those, they were able to make some fairly rapid adjustments. They were accustomed to determining what was significant, what was material to them as a business, and allocating resources in a very precise way in order to address both the risks and opportunities. And we saw companies that weathered a very, very difficult storm when they should have been extremely vulnerable because they had a resilient strategy in place. So I think the notion of not just the transformational side, but the resilience and protection side of it is going to be a driver on ESG as well.
Yeah. Such good points. Yeah. And so where are we headed, and what does that continue to mean for companies, across Wisconsin and beyond?
Well, I mean, I think it means that there's an opportunity here, that businesses can choose to pursue in an incremental fashion. In other words, they can just get engaged, likely to get some measure of incremental results. They can look to build on what they have or start doing some organization/reorganization of the systems that are in their company in order to make them simultaneously profitable and sustainable. So, I mean, I think it really depends on the business. Some of it might be driven by sector. I don't know that that's going to be a primary motivator, but I think that individual business and looking for how they position themselves and protect themselves is where you're likely to see the change. And I mean, let's be honest, there are some businesses going to sit back and say what businesses have said for a very long time that we referenced earlier. When my customer tells me, or when the government passes a regulation, then I'll do it. So, and we can't set our evaluation of success or failure based on whether everybody's in or not. We have to celebrate those that are in, work together with those that are in, facilitate exchange between those that are in, and build on successes.
Oh, yeah. So absolutely. So this is reminding me, Mac, of a phrase that you often use that our team has sort of adopted, right? Which is, the approach of helping companies move from random acts of environmental kindness to a systemic and sustainable superior performance. So we've talked a lot about sort of the why and the driver. So how, right? So the next question is, can you give companies a few tips, maybe on, either how to get started or how to move to the next level?
Sure. Well, I think probably the first thing is to move from linear thinking to systems thinking. I mean, if probably one of the best examples that I know of sustainability is interface carbon. And when Interface Carpet says endeavoring to become the first name in industrial ecology, a corporation that cherishes nature and restores the environment. They didn't just say it, they meant it. And what they did was they used that true north, which it took them a while to explore and discover. But they changed their business model, they changed their culture, they changed their operation, and frankly, they became systems thinkers. I mean, Ray Anderson sent his engineers and research and development folks out into the forest to determine how to build carpet squares that could go together without having to have a matching pattern. And they sold a lot of them. So, I mean, it's that change from linear to systems thinking. The second piece that goes along with that is systems implementation. So one of the reasons you get random acts is you're constantly looking for the next shiny object, or you're reacting to the newest catalyst for reaction inside of your organization. And by changing to systems implementation, you're using a disciplined framework for context, for risk and opportunity, analysis and exploration, development. You're making a structure that will help to guide actions and decision making. And you also are building a structure for adaptation and leverage development. In essence, you're using a repeatable process to get you progressively to your desired future state. It's not a random act, it's a deliberate act with where you want to go. And to put it in really simple terms, what you're doing is going from the traditional guess, react, hope, and hide approach to decision making inside of organizations to plan, do, check, and act. You know, in many organizations, you know, I'm going to guess what's right. I'm going to react to what's out there. I'm going to hope that I got it right. And if I didn't, I'm going to find a heck of a good place to hide so that I'm not overly tortured by, you know, not having gotten the result that somebody wanted. So plan, do, check, act is we may still make mistakes, but we're going to make deliberate ones so that we know how to get that won't get us to our desired future state. What do we do next in order to get there? The last piece that I would throw out associated with that is I think we have to break the barriers with community and government to get beyond one-off solutions, or at least doing things that we thought were solutions, and start running the systems that we implement in an inclusive fashion with community and government, and also using the systems thinking to make sure that we, through appreciative inquiry or whatever methodology you want to use, understand the rationale and information behind how somebody other than us sees that sustainable practice issue. So those are the ones that I would say are out there. There's all kinds of frameworks. I'm not going to tell you there's one right way to do it. There's plenty of examples of systems thinking and the multiple dimensions that you have to consider. And, you know, for many companies, the scariest part is talking to communities and heaven help us having to interact in some ongoing fashion with government, which just scares the daylights out of many organizations. But having played in this space, probably the most underrated and greatest potential for value creation is on the community and government side of the equation. If we can break those barriers down, we just see really, really interesting things happening.
Yeah. So many things I want to say in response to all of that. You know, first, the plan, do, check, act component of it, I think, you know, it's not oversimplifying it. taking it and systematizing it, right? I think people sometimes miss that simple step of integrating the things that they're already doing, like not reinventing the wheel, not creating new systems, using the systems that you already have in, just working on integrating them. But yeah, we're working towards continuous improvement. I think that's always been the case inside of sustainability, as it is with, the Lean Six Sigma type of things. And taking that model just allows you to learn from your mistakes, create a culture in which this is sort of the norm, and then leads you to innovation, potentially new markets. There's sort of untapped amount of possibilities or opportunities within all of that. So, and what else did I want to say?
I'll just amplify the point you just made, Jesse, and that is, I probably haven't emphasized it enough, and that is the discovery of what you already have and leveraging that for further development. That goes to the start where you are portion of it, and don't assume that even though you haven't ever talked about sustainability, that you haven't been doing things that are sustainable. And capturing, organizing, and leveraging those can be a tremendously powerful force inside of an organization.
Yes, and I also wanted to emphasize another thing you said, which is don't underestimate starting with where you're at, but take the time to understand your current state, right? Because you can't necessarily move to your desired future state until you really understand where you are and what might need to shift or change to get you there. So again, it sometimes seems like a very simple exercise or approach, but it really can help companies identify and prioritize, the actions, or prioritize that as which as we've been saying is material to your company, so that you don't have to do all of the things that it makes sense for your business, your culture, your sector, all of those things. So, well, Mac, I've learned so much from you over the years about leadership, and this series is about leadership. So I want to talk a little bit about that. How would you describe your approach to influencing businesses to be proactive and see opportunities that sustainability presents and that you've been sharing about?
Sure. And I would say there are 4 elements associated with that. The first one, and I'm ready to openly admit that it took me a heck of a long time to learn this first one, but don't underestimate its value. And that is to lead with the resource card and the power of one. And by the power of one, I mean, I want the ideal state in any business is one resource comes in and one resource of value goes out, and there's 0 that goes by the board as a result of that resource moving through your organization. This is something that is inherent in most businesses, and many have invested in creating programs around the notion of resource management. What hasn't happened as readily is the marriage between that approach to resource efficiency and sustainability within an organization. And I think the leading with the resource card, knowing that in many or most businesses, that's a core competency, and it's fundamentally important to sustainability in the manufacturing community is a very, very important card. And I was playing in the sustainability space before I came to WMEP, and it took my time at WMEP to understand A, what that card was, and B, what it meant to an organization and to sustainability overall. And knowing how to present that card and carry on that conversation with the business is fundamentally important to get them started. Second thing is something that we just talked about, and that is leverage the systems and decision-making structures that are in place. don't try to build something new if you've got a reliable, trusted system or decision-making process that can be used in order to help understand and, in many cases, resource the work that needs to be done on sustainability. And the example I'll give you is this. How much better would a strategic business plan be if sustainability was a part of that strategic business plan, giving you the ability to understand what elements of sustainability are going to make it easier for me to get to that strategic business objective I set? What elements of sustainability, if I don't pay attention to them, could make accomplishing that strategic business plan difficult, if not impossible? So it's that value creation by not saying I'm going to have a sustainability plan, but I'm going to have sustainability a part of my strategic business planning process. Not every company has one, but what we found is companies that think, oh, nobody's going to think about that strategic business planning. Our responsible parties aren't going to think in terms of sustainability. I've yet to go to a company and say, all right, you're in charge of this element of the strategic business plan. Let's talk for a second about what's material for your company from a sustainability standpoint, and what of those things is going to keep you from getting to your objective or help you to get to your objective. And in every case, the owners of those strategic elements can identify, once they know what the material metrics are, all right, what's going to stand in my way or what's going to get me there quicker. The third thing is to give the businesses free and usable tools. The notion that you're going to have some new software system or some exotic library of information, distill it down for them, give them the information to get them going. And then the last thing that I would say that is fundamentally important is remind them that there's value in rediscovering purpose and innovation in your company. Many businesses were started with a very distinct purpose, and their early years, the reason they got to be successful was because of the measure of innovation. Understand that sustainability can help you to rediscover those two things that got you started initially. So those would be the four. Lead with resource, make sure you leverage systems and decision making, give them free and usable tools, and rediscover the joy of purpose and innovation.
Great tips. So I'm going to ask you this last question kind of in combination. I'm curious, what lessons have you learned that have helped you be more effective? And as you share that, also thinking about the qualities you think are necessary for those listening to lead effective change.
Sure. And I'm going to just restate what I just stated. And I would say the biggest lesson that I learned, and unfortunately I learned it late, is the power of that resource card and the ability to have that be a catalyst for work that gets done on the sustainability side. The second lesson that I've learned, and you've heard me say this in previous occasions, and that is, if you're doing something in this space and it's not profitable and it's not creating value for you, stop. Don't assume that I'm just going to do this because it's sustainability. It has to create value, or it has to create profit, or candidly, it's not sustainable. It's going to eventually fall by the board.
Yeah, Mac, let me jump in, because I feel like that is something that I have learned so much from you, and it's true about all levels of sustainability, right? Like everything you do within your company needs to be able to add value. And I think sometimes sustainability professionals don't think about it through that lens because we're so passionate about the why we do the work that we forget to talk to leaders about the why for the company. And so I just want to like reinforce that message and thinking about helping understand that why, taking it to a deeper level. But like even in sustainability reporting, like don't just do a report to do a report, do a report in a way that adds value to your communication, to your relationships with your stakeholders, your customers. What do they want to see and hear? Don't leave out the storytelling aspects, that the humanization of it. So I think that's such a good one. I just wanted to emphasize it a bit.
So the other lesson that I've learned, and you've heard me use this, I actually started using this back before I retired from DNR. And it's actually a follow-on to the, if it isn't profitable, stop doing it. If it ain't profitable, it ain't sustainable. And that is that you need to have, you need to look at all of the components of the value proposition. And the way I put it is, when you hear sustainability, you should see money. In other words, and see money in this case is an acronym, CMONEY. And that lays out the various dimensions of sustainability. So the first is customers and the people that are looking for sustainable products. So new, better, more purchasing. Second is markets. And that is, we know that there are markets that are open now because sustainability is understood. And we're not talking about little markets here. We're talking about trillions of dollars being expended for sustainable products. The third portion of it is opportunity. If you look at your business through a sustainability lens, there's a high probability that you're going to see things that you didn't see before, for opportunities for cost reduction, opportunities for material efficiency. So it's the opportunity side. That's the internal perspective associated with the value proposition. The N is networking, and we talked about that a little earlier. That is the de-escalation of competition and the acceleration of collaboration and joint problem solving. And we're going to need to do that. And companies that have sustainability programs and build that networking part into their value proposition, it will help them. Employees is the third piece. That's the E. The workforce is changing, and we're changing to a workforce that not only understands sustainability, they've internalized it, and they're using it to motivate decision making, both in terms of where they work, as well as what they buy and who they support. Is that going to be some switch that somebody flips? No. But are you going to have to be aware of it as a business? Absolutely, because the nature of that purchasing public is changing. And the last piece is you, and that is your brand recognition as a company. And unfortunately, many companies don't try to monetize that. The research out there has some really good insights on how you monetize that brand value and start giving some consideration to, if I don't protect my brand through sustainable practice, what's it likely to cost me in terms of customers that I lose, in terms of work that I have to do through my sales department in order to shore up where somebody's gone by the board. So there's a real asset in monetizing your brand value as a part of this proposition. So anybody who's listening, next time you hear sustainability, see money.
I love that. I think I'm going to have to put it in the text of the email. It's so good.
So let me answer the second part of that question, and this is the part that even though I'm old, I am extremely excited about the opportunities that are presenting themselves right now as a result of sustainability. What I see coming, and where I see the greatest opportunities for sustainability professionals, is making the move from a reactive structure that while providing systematic superior performance, still has not fully transformed the organization to the position that I see coming. And what I think is necessary is those professionals that are capable of working in and pursuing the proactive and transformational space, leading groups, building new business relationships, both up and down the value chain, looking at different structures, being able to articulate, pursue, and test new business models, being able to integrate innovation, that true value creating piece in the proactive side of the equation. And for those sustainability professionals that move down that road, I think that's what I see the next phase of leadership and sustainability addressing. And let me, and really the way to think about it is it's making the move from doing less bad to doing more good. And to put it in very practical terms, as we look at the carbon crisis as it stands right now, and you can argue with me at length, but in order to get to the 1.5 degree goal that's been set, the truth of the matter is we're not going to get there because not every business is going to do what's necessary by making investments or making changes in their businesses to get to the carbon levels that are dictated by the 1.5 degrees. What that means is those folks, those businesses out there that get it, they're going to have to do more. They're going to have to figure out those strategies, those investments, those programs that get them beyond the notion of 1.5 degrees. So we get beyond the energy conservation, alternate fuels, to carbon recovery, to changed consumption patterns. There's all kinds of things that go into that. And I'm only offering that as an example because if you look across the whole spectrum of sustainability, it's those businesses that are on the proactive side of the equation, building relationships and networks that are going to be the ones that come out as leaders on the other side. And I should say, and new business models that help them get there.
Absolutely. And I just hear innovate, innovate. We need it, right? We need technology and innovation to drive those solutions, and those businesses who are being proactive right now are on the forefront of creating those opportunities for others. And so, if the sustainability professionals, I mean, we see this all over with like the great resignation that's been happening, right? If somebody doesn't like their culture or the value of the organization they're working for, they go somewhere else. So I think that I just want to say that that's also an opportunity for sustainability professionals, right? Yes, we need to have a level of patience because sometimes when we're working in large systems, things don't move as quick as we'd like, but also be willing to innovate, offer new ideas, go somewhere else if you need to.
Yeah, here's a key difference, Jesse. Yeah. I think the innovation will occur as a result of pursuing sustainability. I don't think innovation will occur necessarily by pursuing innovation.
Yeah, absolutely.
In other words, it is the purpose element associated with that creates the innovation. And there are actually studies that show there is a cause and effect relationship between sustainability and innovation. A company that is systematically pursuing sustainability is 400% more likely to innovate. That's not a casual relationship. That's a causal relationship between the two in terms of the studies that have been done. And there's even more information about things that you do in the interest of sustainability that yield innovation as a result of the purpose that's behind the actions that are managed.
Yeah. Oh, Mac, I feel like we could keep talking for for hours. Of course, I always love chatting with you as I learn so much, and I hope listeners have gotten a lot of value out of this. I just want to remind folks that, we are a member organization. You were speaking a lot about collaboration, and that happens inside of our community. So we want to invite you to consider our programs or joining us as a member. And thanks so much for being here today, Mac.
Thanks for having me, Jesse. It's always fun talking about this. I always tell folks I can talk about sustainability a lot longer than most folks are willing to listen. So thanks for sticking with me, all you listeners.
Yeah, I resonate with that. Thank you.